Hey everybody, welcome back to Ask Nutritionist Deepa's episode of the week. And I hope you all are doing well. And to help us stay well, uh, not only during this time, but also upcoming months, especially fall and winter, we have a special guest here who is going to help us do that because he specializes in getting our lungs built like iron. So his name is Mr. Joe Weaver, and welcome, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so just quick background into Joe's life. First of all, he's my friend's uncle, so that makes it easy. And he is a graduate of Maharishi Rishi International University, which combines traditional education with yoga and meditation, thus making it a little more holistic. So just having that background puts him on a different pedestal because he's been trained to think differently and behave differently. So Joe, I'm so happy that you have joined us today. And before we get into the heavy discussion, I would like you to share a little bit about your background and your life story, because speakers like you are always are very inspirational. So how did you fall into this path, and what have you been up to?
Well, good question. I'm almost 70 years old. I grew up on a farm in the Midwest, in Indiana, actually. And when I was about, in my early 20s, I heard about transcendental meditation and started meditating. And that was about 45 years ago. And I really loved it. I loved it. And it just really worked well for me. It made life so much better in many different ways, physically, mentally, emotionally. It just was a great gift. And so I did a regular life. I got married, I had kids. I was never that good at exercising regularly. But when I was about 59, I read a book by an Ayurvedic physician here in the United States about sports performance. And a big part of that book was a breathing technique taken from yoga and applied to any physical activity, any sport, any physical activity like that. So I tried that, and I was amazed at the difference that it made, not only in my performance, but it was like a visceral physical reaction because it made me feel so much better while I was exercising. So thanks to that breathing technique, I went online and I was doing an exercise program. They had a transformation contest for people over 40, and I was just turning 60. And I thought, well, I'll enter this because now that I've been exercising regularly for the first time in my life for the last 6 months, I was in the best shape of my life. And I entered it and I came in second place. And the guy
So let me interrupt and ask you. So the context was for people over 40. Yes. You were 60.
Yes.
And you were practicing this breathing technique or this exercise routine just for 6 months.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's interesting.
Yes. And I was surprised. I came in second place.
Wow.
The guy in first place was 42 years old, and the guy that was in third place was 43.
Wow. Let me ask you, how many 60-year-olds were there?
There weren't any others.
There weren't any. So you are competing with 40-year-old people.
Yeah, I asked the guys that had that sponsored it if they could have a category for people that were older than 40, but they said, no, there won't be that many. So I had to compete against the other people.
Wow. Okay.
So what happened was that um, as a result, I started to get a lot of questions. This was an online sort of forum, and I started to get questions from people all over. It's like, what is this breathing thing about, and how does it work, and that sort of thing. So I started answering questions, and basically after about a year or so, I decided to write a little program, a little ebook and an exercise program, and some fitness experts on the internet picked it up and started to sell it to their mailing lists.
Okay.
And it eventually got sold in 52 countries around the world.
Very cool.
So I got a very unique vantage point on this breathing technique and how people were using it for a lot of different applications. Like some were using it for running, some were using it for cycling, some were using it for lifting weights, some were using it for, I started to get all these questions like, can I use this breathing technique when I'm at the office, when I'm working? Because I'm in a very tense situation, and this breathing technique makes me feel really relaxed and very focused at the same time. And so I started to answer those questions, and one thing led to another, and now I'm an online fitness coach for people over 60. And the main fundamental thing that I think is very important is using this breathing technique, which actually comes from yoga, using it with any sport, any type of exercise, because of all of the benefits that you get from it.
Interesting. What a story.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. And what it sounds like is this particular breathing technique is for your mind, body. I mean, if it is going to help us with anxiety, depression, coping stress, along with making your lung and obviously everything else stronger in your body, it's a win-win situation. So before we get into the details of the technique, I want to ask you, uh, in general, people think that for meditation or yoga, it's a long process. I have to sit there like a sadhu, for hours to get to a level.
Yes.
And nobody has that kind of mental stamina to sit unless that's the only thing they are doing. So how do you, what would be your recommendation for a ordinary person who is confused, who is overwhelmed, and we just want to start somewhere? And I'll
Yes.
give you a typical scenario. Let's say I'm a stay-at-home mom or dad or busy person, and now I have to work from home, and I have kids and cooking and office and parents and in-laws and so on and so forth to take care of. Where do I start?
It's important. There's a lot of different kinds of meditation techniques. And actually this breathing technique that I do to help out during activity, some traditions use it as a meditation technique also. The most important thing, I mean, meditation should be effortless, and it should be easy, and it should be enjoyable. And to do that, I think you really need, from my experience and the many people I've talked to over the last 45 years since I began meditation, I find that a lot of people maybe start a meditation technique that isn't easy or effortless or enjoyable. It's maybe a concentration technique. That takes a lot more stamina to stick with. I feel like I was really lucky starting out with TM, because the first time I meditated, after I was taught by my teacher, it was just, I went deep really fast.
Wow.
And it was like, I remember going home, meditating, and I was supposed to meditate for 20 minutes.
Hmm.
I closed my eyes,
Hmm.
and then I thought, oh, I wonder if 20 minutes is up yet. And I opened my eyes, and it was 20 minutes was up. And it
Wow.
was just, I felt so refreshed. And it was just so easy.
Hmm.
Whenever somebody, my thing about establishing a habit
Hmm.
is your body and your mind have to have some level of satisfaction for you to continue and make it a habit.
Hmm.
And so in this case for me, I came out of meditation, I was refreshed, I felt really good.
Hmm.
And that continued on and has just gotten deeper and more enjoyable.
I see.
And people need to know that it's not always like that when you start, but you
Hmm.
need to be patient. So the thing is to set aside a certain time for that self-care
Hmm.
and then say, okay, I'm going to do this for the next 60 days.
Correct.
And that sort of attitude will
Hmm.
help foster a practice that you can stay with for a long period of time.
I see. But do you think there is a benefit? And I'm sure there is, even if I start with 2 minutes.
No.
Okay, that's good.
No,
So,
it's
so
like
there needs to be a commitment of some
yes,
time.
that's a good question. And I
Yeah.
get asked that question a lot about
Yeah.
exercise. If I
Yes.
do just 5
Yes.
minutes of exercise each day, is that going to, no, it really won't. You know, it's not enough to get a benefit. It's not
Okay.
enough, it's not enough to get a taste. I would
Okay.
say you're going to need to at least 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay. It's like, I guess, eating a bag of chips. One is never enough until you finish the bag.
Yeah.
you know so all right, that's good to know. So uh, enlighten us with role of lungs and breathing and
Mhm.
how that whole system is connected.
Well, breathing is a fascinating subject, and there's so much research that's been done in the last few years, um, and it all points to a lot of advantages of nasal breathing. So our systems are set up naturally to be nasal breathers instead of
Hmm.
mouth breathers.
Hmm.
And there are a specific set of physiological things that happen when we breathe through our nose that doesn't happen when we breathe through our mouth.
Hmm. I see.
So it's different chemicals, different way. There's a whole process of breathing through the nose that does different things to our body.
Okay.
And you'll have to interrupt me because I can get on a roll on this.
No. It's very important that people really understand the difference between these two kinds of breathing and how it affects our chemical uh, cellular function
Yes.
in the body. That is extremely important, because at the end of the day, the cellular reaction that is happening is determines how what we do and what we feel. So
Mhm.
if breathing is feeding into that, then it's important that we really understand that. So you can talk a couple more minutes about, a little bit more about breathing, because this is very important. We are not breathing.
Yes. So one of the things that's important about nasal breathing is the whole setup that happens
Hmm.
once you have air entering your nose, because our sinus cavities naturally emit nitric oxide.
Hmm. Hmm.
Nitric oxide is a dilator for blood vessels. So
Correct.
this doesn't happen if you breathe through your mouth.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
what happens when you breathe through your nose is that nitric oxide then goes down into your lungs and it dilates those little blood vessels in your
Yeah.
lungs
Yeah.
and makes it much easier to absorb the oxygen that you're so in need of.
Correct.
And that's part of it. There's a whole thing that happens when we breathe deeply also
Hmm.
that is different than when we breathe shallow.
Hmm.
So when we breathe shallow,
Hmm.
we don't let the, and we exhale shallow, I should
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
We don't let much oxygen get down into the lower lobes of the lungs. Now, the lower
Okay.
lobes of the lungs have the most blood vessels in them.
Interesting.
So you can imagine if we are up for optimal breathing,
Hmm.
if we're breathing through our nose, that nitric oxide is mixing with the inhale.
Hmm.
We've done, we're exhaling fully. When we inhale, that nitric oxide and oxygen will go down and reach that lower level of our lungs,
Hmm.
lower lobes. And as a
Hmm.
result, we'll get more of that oxygen into our bodies in a quicker fashion.
Very, very interesting. Fascinating, actually. Wow. Um, wow. I mean, like you said, this is such a deep subject. Uh, we can go on and on about this and learn so much. So, what can you teach us today? Is
Okay,
there any quick technique that you can show us? Um,
yes, there is.
okay.
And I
Okay.
should also, there's another half of what's happening physiologically that's
Okay.
important to remember.
Hmm.
So if we breathe shallow and breathe through our mouth,
Hmm.
we're usually getting in the fight or flight response. The sympathetic autonomic nervous system is being
Correct.
stimulated.
Hmm.
Now, when we stimulate the sympathetic autonomic nervous system,
Hmm.
it usually will set off, it's like our body is responding to a emergency,
Crisis.
a crisis. And the result of that hormonally is usually the production of cortisol and
Cortisol.
adrenaline, which are
Correct.
catabolic hormones.
Correct.
And they break down things, they release a lot of energy really fast,
Correct.
which really saps a lot of energy in our body.
Hmm.
And really, if you think about it, an emergency response depletes the immune system at the same time.
Correct.
So if we really want to set up an optimal situation where our immune system is as strong as possible,
Hmm.
it's better to stimulate the parasympathetic
Hmm.
nervous system,
Hmm.
which is the relax and digest part
Hmm.
of our nervous system.
Hmm.
And that system is controlled a lot by the vagus nerve, which
Correct.
goes from the brain to the back
Brain.
of the throat
Correct.
down into the digestive system.
Yeah.
Now, when we do that, we have the resulting feeling of sort of relaxation,
Hmm.
uh, you know, uh, more of an oceanic sort of feeling.
Sure.
So if we can remember to breathe through our nose
Hmm.
and inhale and exhale fully, but not to strain, because when you strain, you start to get into the fight or flight. You start to get into that emergency thing. So we
Hmm.
want to relax, we want to feel good, we want to have that oceanic feeling.
Hmm.
So a simple technique to do that is,
Hmm.
I'll teach you this technique. What it
Okay.
does is, since you're getting more oxygen into your system
Hmm.
and you're doing something that stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system,
Hmm.
you have the best of both
Both
worlds.
worlds. Yeah.
You are relaxed, but you are alert and energetic at the same time.
Correct.
And so
Interesting.
that really fosters great performance, whether you're at work, whether you're exercising or doing anything. And it actually fosters, it's, you know, it's a really a basic form of self-care because it really fosters the whole body and mind at the same time. So it's when we get tense, you know, a lot of times you'll notice that when you get tense, your breathing becomes very shallow.
Yeah.
And so those go hand in hand. If you can start breathing more deeply, just remember to breathe deeply and inhale and exhale through your nose, then you're setting up more optimum conditions for your immune system and for your well-being.
My goodness. I mean, what can I say? I'm speechless in the sense our body is designed so beautifully, right? And all these systems, respiratory, immune, endocrine, digestive, they are so interconnected.
Yes.
And yet, in this modern world, we feel so disconnected.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and I think these breathing techniques will I hope will bring the listeners, or will make listeners more mindful as well, because the more oxygen you breathe, the more you get all these systems in tune, aligned, the more calmer and connected our bodies are going to feel, and that uh, hopefully will help people feel less overwhelmed and focus, and will help less feeling less overwhelmed and focus on what is really important, is their health and well-being.
Yes. It's like, for me, once I learned this technique and started applying it during my exercise program, then the benefits that I got from that started to seep out to the rest of my life.
Correct.
Even though I've been meditating for, at the time, probably about 35 years, almost every day, twice a day, you know, I'd achieved a good amount of relaxation and well-being.
Yeah.
But then with this breathing technique, it just started to reduce my even more any anxiety level.
Yeah.
So it was just so beautiful. It's like I didn't worry about things like I used to worry about things. It was just so much, everything became so much easier.
So much
So,
easier and clear.
yeah. And I will teach you this technique, and it comes from yoga. It's called, this particular breathing technique. Now, yoga has many different breathing techniques for many different purposes. I really like this technique because for most of us, it satisfies a lot of different things that we're looking for. Like I have people that use it during exercise because it makes exercise more enjoyable and it makes it easier and they recover faster. I also have people that use it to go to sleep because it relaxes the whole mind and body. I have other people that use it as a meditation technique. And I have other people that'll use it at the office while they're busy doing things, just to calm all of their anxiety, all their stress, you know, to do that. And at the same time, to be more focused and have more energy. So
that is amazing that you can do this technique. When done correctly, you can do it while you are working.
Yes.
You know, because one of our biggest excuses is, oh, I don't have time, you know.
Yeah.
But if you can, if we have this type of techniques handy, then we can definitely find, we don't even have to find time, because it's just part of who you are, the breathing thing. I have a quick question for you. I see a lot of patients suffering from sleep apnea. Okay. And I am, as a practitioner, provider, really struggling to find a good solution for them. It's a very difficult situation that these people are stuck in. They don't have energy because obviously sleep apnea, you know, obstructs their breathing.
Mhm.
pathway, so they cannot breathe, less oxygen, they don't have energy, they can't cook, they can't eat well, they can't exercise, and we are just going in rounds and rounds and rounds. um, do you think it will help them a little bit?
Yes. In fact, I think, the most authoritative book that I found
Mm.
on the breathing techniques that I'm talking about is called The Oxygen Advantage. The
Okay.
Oxygen Advantage by a gentleman, I think his last name is McEwen.
Mm.
Uh, he has done so much research and has
Mm.
put together so much research uh, on this. And there's another method called the Butenko method
Mm.
of breathing, which is
Okay.
for people that have asthma.
Okay.
And I have read and I have seen an interview with the author of the Oxygen Advantage
Mm.
talking about how nasal breathing in particular can help reduce and help solve that sleep apnea problem.
Okay, perfect. But I'm excited now to learn whatever you can teach us
Okay,
about technique, this breathing technique.
okay.
Mm.
So the number one thing to remember is not to strain,
Okay.
because straining will contradict all of the things that you're trying to do. You're trying to relax,
Mm.
reduce stress, and once you start to strain, you
Mm.
counteract that.
Okay.
So here's the process. This breathing technique is called, in yoga, it's called ujjayi breathing.
Okay.
And there's some different kinds of ujjayi breathing. The one I'm going to explain might be different than maybe a little different than what you've learned in yoga.
Okay.
But number one, you breathe through your nose, inhale and exhale. So we'll just do that a few times, and then I'll teach you the second part.
Okay.
So
Everyone.
inhale deep, go ahead.
Okay. No, I said just give us the instructions so the audience will also hopefully inhale with us.
Okay, so just don't strain to get all the air in that you can, and don't strain to get all of the exhale out. Just take a
Okay.
nice, easy, relaxed breath through your nose.
Okay.
Exhale through your nose. Again, inhale and exhale through your nose. We'll do it one more time. Inhale through your nose. Exhale through your nose. Okay, you're probably already feeling just a little bit relaxed.
Yeah. Yes, for
Yes,
sure.
because you are stimulating that parasympathetic nervous system every time you do that. Okay, so now the second part of this technique, which is more of a stimulus to the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve. So when you exhale this time, you're going to exhale as if you were saying ha, but with your mouth closed and no audible sound. Just that back of your throat slightly constricted, as if you were saying ha, but without making a sound.
Okay.
So inhale. Now exhale through your nose with that slight constriction at the back of your throat. Did you notice when you did that there was a little hissing noise?
No.
Okay. Okay, there should be a very slight hissing noise,
Okay.
similar to the noise that you hear, the sound that you hear if you put a seashell up to your ear.
Okay. But I have a question. So when should I make the ha
That's when you're
sound?
exhaling.
When I'm exhaling? Okay. So I may have done it incorrectly actually.
And there's another helpful hint on this is when you are exhaling, you can either visualize saying ha. Actually, we can do that.
Okay.
We can say ha while we're exhaling. We can just say ha,
Yeah,
ha.
that might be better.
Okay, let's inhale. Now we'll say ha, ha, like if you were holding a note. Ha, like that. Okay. Now, this time we're going to inhale, but you're going to keep your mouth shut
Okay.
and you're not going to vocalize, but
Okay.
you're going to keep that throat position about the same.
Oh, okay.
Inhale. Now exhale through your nose. Did you hear a slight hissing noise?
Yes. This
Yeah.
time I did, almost like ocean waves type
That-
of thing.
Yes, that's why in yoga, this breath is sometimes called ocean breath.
Oh, is that right? I literally felt it.
Yes. Yes. And you don't have to strain. Like some people in yoga call this Darth Vader breath, you
Okay.
know, and Darth Vader would be, you know, really strain
Yeah.
like that. It's not like that. It's like the easier you make it, the better it is for you. But you want that slight hissing noise. And you'll notice that if you do it like you're sort of holding a note, you're exhaling a long, long exhale. And that long exhale is very important because that is what stimulates the vagus nerve. It stimulates, the vagus nerve is in the back of our throat. If we're making a slight turbulence in the back of our neck, our throat, it's going to have an effect on that vagus nerve.
Absolutely.
So that long exhale accomplishes two things. It empties the lungs so that when we breathe in, all that nitric oxide and oxygen will go to the bottom lobes of our lungs where there are the most blood vessels, and it'll be absorbed the quickest and the most, and it'll get that oxygen. It'll really oxygenate our whole system. And there's another part of that thing that if you had a trouble getting that sound, then you can think of like if you were fogging up your glasses. You know how people go,
Sure. Yeah.
they go like that with their palate sort of lifted. Okay, that lifted palate, that helps to set some people so that they get how to do this. So you're exhaling like you were fogging up your glasses, but with your mouth closed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That fogging up your glasses analogy is also very good because these are some of the actions we are doing without realizing. We just have to apply that as a technique.
And so that is the technique. That's as simple as it is. You don't strain, and you just employ that technique. Now you can imagine if you were using it during activity, like for instance, I have clients that have come to me and learn this technique, and then they go hiking with their husband or their wife. And like I had one wife tell me, she said, well, my husband was always like, 50 yards ahead of me when we were hiking. And I always had trouble breathing and getting enough oxygen and didn't have the endurance. And once she'd been doing this for several weeks, then she said, I'm actually ahead of my husband now. So there's one example. Another example is I had another lady who was in the community choir, and she'd been a singer all of her life. She loved to sing. She was like, 65 years old or so. I taught her this technique, and 2 weeks later she came back and she said, Joe, you're not going to believe this, but I can now hold a note longer than I've ever been able to hold a note in my life.
Wow.
So what I've seen is that this actually really helps to develop the lungs. It seems to give people more VO2 capacity than any other thing that I found.
That is just amazing. Such valuable, such important and useful information you have shared with us, Joe. Because just imagine if listeners, if they could master this along with good nutrition, there is no corona in the world that can attack us. attack our bodies, really. So people out there, friends, family, patients, clients, please, please, please pay attention to this particular episode, the technique that Joe just shared with us, because this is extremely important. Think of it like a dose of medication, if that's what you want to look at this at as. So, Joe, as a parting gift to us, um, can you share a recipe or a food that you may think is going to add to our vitality? Because every episode we give away a recipe, but today you have given us so much. I'm going to add another thing for you to do is to share your favorite recipe or anything that will help us with uh, food.
Yes. It's one of the things, people have trouble appreciating vegetables.
Tell me about it.
And a lot of that has to do with spices.
Correct.
In the United States, we're so used to just having, maybe butter, and then you put
Salt.
cheese on it, and all this stuff.
Mm.
And you don't really need to do that to bring out the deliciousness of vegetables. And one of the best things that I've found is churnas. There's 3 different kinds of churnas. There's a vata churna, a kapha churna, and a pitta churna.
Okay.
And for my constitution, I really like vata churna. But what
I
I
see.
do is, I'll steam my vegetables or however I fix them, and I'll put the churna on, and it's like a whole other experience.
Okay.
It makes the vegetables a lot more delicious. But what churnas are actually supposed to do is they're supposed to make it so that it satisfies all the senses, all the 6 tastes in
Yes.
Ayurveda. And part of Ayurveda is like, well, if you satisfy all those tastes, you'll also satisfy yourself emotionally.
Correct.
So we in the West, we eat all this food and it's not satisfying, so we eat more of it.
Yeah.
Because it's not satisfying on that deep level of
Correct.
getting nutrition both physically and emotionally. I think
Absolutely.
churnas are really great for that. And I'll send you a recipe for the churnas. Just
For the
simple.
churnas.
Yeah.
Okay, so audience, churna is a mix or powder, you can say, of some herbs and spices that have therapeutic or functional properties. Think of it like salt and pepper packets, but just at an extremely high nutritive value level. But that's what churna is, and we will have the recipe for the churna in the body of the podcast notes. So thank you, Joe, for sharing the churna concept to us, concept with us. Now, where can we find you if we want to take a class?
Yes.
Can we move in your neighborhood? Anything?
Well,
Because there's so much to learn here.
all my classes are online, so
Oh, perfect.
so nobody has to move anywhere.
That is right. That's good.
So
So,
you can find me at you can email me at joe at fit50plus.com, and that's all spelled out. FITFIFTYPLUS.com. And my website is spelled out the same way, fit50plus.com.
okay, perfect. And do you offer classes every week? Every week,
Yes, I
pretty
have
much?
about 12 to 13 group classes with a
Okay.
small group of 6 to 8 people at the
Okay.
max.
Okay.
And we do it over Zoom so that everybody can follow along. And
Yeah.
I play really nice, good, popular music from the 60s and 70s and the 80s.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I also do one-on-ones
Sure.
if the person makes an appointment for that.
Okay. Perfect. And Can somebody be younger than 50 and join your classes?
Ha!
Why, why age discrimination?
This is sort of like the reverse of ageism, huh?
Yeah, because childhood obesity is on rise.
Yes.
I'm seeing younger and younger population with high cholesterol and blood pressure and diabetes and asthma is rampant. So I need to get the younger generation involved in this because it's going to affect their well-being and their performance in school, and world unfortunately is becoming more stressful than it used to be. So they need to have strong lungs and mind and everything. So you
Yes.
need to start a website 50andyounger.com.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it is a good thing that, age groups exercise with their age group because their abilities are more evenly matched.
for
So,
sure,
so that's a
for
good
sure.
thing. Yeah.
Lovely. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a pleasure, uh, an honor to have you on the show and sharing your knowledge. And I'm just grateful that I came across my friend Debbie just a month ago, and we were chatting, and she said, "Hey, call my Uncle Joe. He's a perfect person to be on the podcast." So thanks again, and I'm sure our paths will cross soon. And until then, I wish you health and happiness. And everybody out there, please take care. Please pay attention to your breath and getting your lungs stronger. We just learned an extremely powerful technique from Joe. We must start practicing it. And if we need more help, we feel free to contact him or reach out to me, and I will connect you with him as well. Thank you, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you.